somewhere than that. In honor of winter solstice, it starts out a little bit light and then it gets just darker and darker. An acquaintance isn't a relative and isn't a friend, just someone you know but not very well. Maybe a friend of a friend, someone you nod to when you pass on the street. How's it going? Or have an uneasy chat with on the subway platform when you'd rather be alone in your head, listening to some golden oldie playing there and trying to recall the complicated lyrics. Every time I think that I'm the only one who's lonely, someone calls on me. Every now and then I spend my time in rhyme and verse and curse those faults in me. And then along comes Mary. And then what? But this guy shows up. What's his name? And he'll want to talk. And he's very bored. And he's off. Well, it's really going to be something when they stop running the L, isn't it? Yes, it is. Do you have a plan? Yes. I'm not going to leave my apartment for 15 months. Really? Yes, I'm not even going to get out of bed. How are you going to manage that? How are you going to eat? I will train pigeons to bring me crumbs. I'll leave a window open and they'll feed me in my bed. He stares at me. Just then the Canarsie-bound train arrives. Gotta run, take it easy, I utter, waving as I board, although I was waiting for the Manhattan train. I take the L to Lorimer and switch to the train I want, hoping I don't run into him again. If I do, I'll make something up or I'll pretend to pass out. I should feel bad about my reluctance to have human contact with this unfortunate, lonely, very boring man. Instead, I feel bad that I don't feel bad about not wanting to move beyond acquaintanceship to friendship. But I see him often on Bedford Avenue, and I'm afraid to be drawn into his life and to draw him into mine, eating dinner together, exchanging cliches about the topics of the day. Now that I've confessed this much, I'm thinking it'd be better if I engaged him in a real conversation about something real and found a way for us to act like genuine human beings made in the image of God. Sure enough, when the train stops at Bedford Avenue, he gets in the car, sees me. Now what do I say? Well, sometimes I want to run away to the middle of the outback where I will stay until all the demons have had their say. Then leave me alone so I can play my didgeridoo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, didgeridoo-doo-doo. Well, sometimes it feels like there's no use but to quit the struggle and call a truce. Go back to Ohio, but until I do's, I'm playing a song for the kangaroos on my didgeridoo-doo-doo-doo, my didgeridoo-doo. If I had $1 million, I would never leave this place. I'd spend my time just painting pictures, grooving in my time and space. Joyful, joyful, I am joyful as I can be. As long as the L train keeps on running, I'm as joyful as I can be. Early afternoon, Madison Square Park. Not quite equinox, but it's getting there. The top of the Empire State Building is in the clouds. I'm sitting on a bench, and behind me, on the other side of the bushes, on the sidewalk, the disordered man is growling. The girl at the next bench is on her phone. Oh my God, I just met a famous dog. It has 10,000 followers. It is orange and fluffy. I was hoping to see the angel today. The angel's a man I met in this park. He spoke to me as I was passing through. He commented on my aura. He recognized, he said, that I am also an angel. Angels never talk to each other, he said. What kinds of things would angels talk about, I asked. He dismissed the question, waved it away with his hand. His eyes are a terrifying blue and his hair is white. I couldn't help staring at the tattoo on his forehead. An inverted triangle with something on the point like a tear. Hanging on the point, and something inside it I couldn't make out. I wondered if he gave himself the tattoo. What is that symbol on your forehead? The Trinity, he says, pointing at it with both hands and nodding. Trinity. The Trinity? God? Yes, yes. Amen, amen, amen. The Father is far away. He is the creator and destroyer and is remote, except when he is angry. And we never know why he is angry. The Holy Spirit is the mother, and the wind on the waters, the comforter and protector. And the child is the revolutionary lover. That is what I remember, but I probably have it wrong. He was saying these things as if I already knew them, but I'm already forgetting them. He was out of his mind, I guess, but no, this is his mind, and he clearly was in this mind. He said he had to return to heaven because it was beginning to rain. How do you get to heaven, I asked. It is by the East River, he said. But when he walked away, he was going north on Broadway. I dropped out of high school in my senior year, and a year went by in which I studied to be a beat poet. I don't remember writing any poetry that year, but I did a lot of reading, and I rode my bicycle around West Palm Beach, and I smoked pot. A friend had a plan to have a show on the public access cable TV station, but that never came about. He lived in an old house in Palm Beach that had been the headquarters for an underground newspaper that folded a couple of years earlier. And we hadn't yet figured out what it meant that the 60s were over. He also had a plan to get a caravan of vans to make a road trip to the West Coast, but that didn't happen either. He always had weed, though, so we smoked and watched TV. The summer came, I took Greyhound to Chautauqua, New York, to take a writing seminar conducted by a poet and an editor from some notable publishing house. I forget which one. The poet was well known for a poet. It was not a beat, but an academic who translated Dante's Divine Comedy. He gave very interesting lectures that took very good poems apart to show how they worked. The seminar was over in 2 weeks, and I never showed the teachers any writing because I was intimidated by them, and the study of great poetry showed me how weak my writing was. I signed up for a painting class also, but had low expectations because high school art classes had not worked out for me, or I didn't work out for them, and I discovered Duchamp, which confused me about art. Picasso died that year, and that seemed significant somehow, but I didn't know how. Chautauqua Institute is a strange, charming place, a gated community of 19th century wooden buildings. A big fire trap, my cousin called it, where there were summer classes for people in search of culture and an orchestra made up of musicians from real orchestras on their summer break. The art center was peopled with teenagers and retired people and art students and weekend painters, and painting classes taught by an eccentric from Connecticut named Revington Arthur, who wore Bermuda shorts, sandals, a sports shirt, and a bucket hat like Gilligan's. He was a painter who made big surrealist pictures with hard-edged architectural forms. He used masking tape to make the edges and acrylic paint. His young assistant suggested I buy a sketchbook and pencil since I had no supplies with me. I sat at a little antique school desk and made a cartoonish drawing of a man being sucked into a TV set. Revington was intrigued, and Blair, the young assistant, and Bob, the older assistant, were also amused. Blair suggested I buy some acrylics and a painting pad and do a painted version of the drawing, which I did. On Friday, they hung the student work on the wall, and Revington performed a critique. I had never been interested in composition before, but the poetry lectures had prepared me to look at pictures as something like poems, and that all the elements work together. In his critiques, he would often suggest that a painting needed something else to make it interesting, and the example he came up with was invariably a cat. What if you had a cat peering over his shoulder, he would say, about some retiree's first attempt at portraiture. Revington was very enthusiastic about Picasso. He pronounced the A like the A in cat, Picasso. Revington was the first person I met who had devoted his life to painting. He had studied with Arshad Gorky at the Art Students League. He told me I should read Andre Breton. He might have had some limitations as a teacher, but he encouraged me and taught me to extend myself. I went back to Chautauqua after trying to teach myself to paint, and I felt I need to go to art school to learn the skills I wanted. He recommended the Cleveland Institute of Art, which is where I went. Where I met Don and Rebecca, by the way. I visited him at Chautauqua a few years after I got my BFA. They fired me, he said. He was now a professor emeritus, and he had the same old studio. He was working on a painting that had an elephant chained to a post. The elephant is us, he said, or we are the elephant. I remember watching him one day as he walked across the lawn toward his studio, along a grassy ridge in his Bermuda shorts, sandals, and bucket hat. The cat following him completes the picture. I will have to get an abortion, he said. You don't love me. That wasn't fair, I thought. Does she love me? Of course, I guess. But I was scared of her, kind of. It was a summer affair, and as the season was ending, I had wanted to break up with her because, I guess, I wasn't in love with her. I knew she wanted me to be in love with her. And it was a mess. And then she started acting strange. She was eating bloody raw beef. She showed me old drawings she did in Italy when she was living in a chicken shed. Drawings of chicken heads scattered on the ground. But the chicken heads looked too much like severed penises. Unnerving. I was a confused graduate philosophy student, and she was a confused art student. I had 2 incomplete courses to resolve before fall, and I wanted to break up with her. But then she told me her period was late. So I waited at home while she went to the free clinic to get the pregnancy test. And I sat on the balcony with my roommate, and the full moon rose over East Cleveland and accused me of being an irresponsible child. I worried about what we would do if she had a baby, considering the distrust we had for each other, or the distrust I had for her. It seemed like a trap, but I don't want to say it was a trap, but yeah, it was a trap. She set for herself, that we set for ourselves. The moon was wise, and I was not. I was relieved when she said she would get an abortion, and I didn't have to tell her I would stay with her if she had the baby. It would have been a beautiful baby, she said. The night before we went to the clinic, we walked from her apartment in Little Italy to the Feast of the Assumption Festival, a vulgar carnival that included a shooting gallery with Roaring '20s Tommy guns and a garish Virgin Mary with dollar bills pinned to her. We pressed forward through the drunken crowd to my place on Hessler Road. She stayed at my place, and in the morning we went to the clinic and had to walk through another bizarre scene of picketing anti-abortion people accusing us of murder, of being baby killers. I waited in the waiting room and read Our Bodies, Ourselves until the procedure was over. I felt bad for her and guilty for causing this. This wasn't her first abortion, and I felt bad for her, but not for the not yet baby that had been growing in her, part of her. We stayed together for a year, then she went to another city, another school, and we'd get together on holiday breaks, and we broke up a few times and reunited a few times. Until 6 years after the first summer, we broke up for good because I'd fallen in love with someone, and we knew it was over. She called me and we talked, and she said a friend of hers had recently had a baby, and she's held it in her arms, and it was a beautiful baby. It seemed like the tears shot straight out of my eyes. Okay. Take a deep breath, we're almost finished. Guided Meditation for Winter Solstice 2017. My wife had often claimed that courage is an issue for me because I am a 6 on the Enneagram. I didn't really understand the Enneagram, and to the degree I understood it, I resisted it. The Enneagram categorizes people into 9 types of character or personalities. Lori was a 4, she claimed, with a 5 wing. I can't explain what a wing is, but I also have a 5 wing, and she said that is where our characters meet or intersect, and is why we could relate at all. I don't like to be categorized, but this resistance to categorization and my skepticism about the Enneagram are both probably traits of a 6. I conform to a nonconformist form. My dream is I'm courageous, my fear is I'll chicken out. I needed courage when Lori was dying, but there really wasn't any escape. And chickening out wasn't an option. But I was afraid I wouldn't know what to do to take care of her, and that caregiving would be overwhelming. Lori also read tarot cards. She said it isn't really divination in the sense of foretelling the future, but guided meditation. I wasn't comfortable with the spiritualist occult aspect, but the symbols and images of the cards interested me poetically. And the process of giving meaning to a random sequence of images struck me as analogous to dream interpretation and to dreaming itself, which is said to be the result of the random firing of neurons. Lori died of cancer in the summer of 2015. Last December, before Christmas, she appeared in a dream. She was showing me an unfinished painting on a wood panel. It had a small rectangular hole cut out of it. She said that there is a tiny deck of cards that goes into that hole. And I said that I had them somewhere and I can find them because I organized the studio, although I'm not finished, and she laughed. But I said I can find them, and the good thing is I can now put things away because I know where to put them. She looked very sexy, like Lena Olin in The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and I was amazed that I had forgotten we could make love. And how could that have slipped my mind? Oh yeah, she's dead. When I woke up, I remembered I really did have a tiny deck of tarot cards that came with a tiny gift book that said what each card means. I found the tiny cards and decided to do a reading on the night of the winter solstice. I wanted to experience the long darkness of that night as part of my Advent observance. So I turned everything off and did the reading by candlelight, which wasn't easy. The little tarot book used a 4-card layout. The cards are given meanings as general as a newspaper horoscope. Every statement could apply to almost everyone at any time. On the other hand, some are also fairly universal. I took notes, straining my eyes in the candlelight. The first card is the 10 of Pentacles, the situation at hand. My imagination is superior and my talents are in demand, and as I attain one goal, another emerges. I need to be both prudent and confident, make plans, and refuse to be detoured from the objective. The second card is the 2 of Cups, shows past influences. Make peace with somebody who recently wronged me. Expect a happy surprise, a new relationship. Don't buy into social pressure. Ponder this as the 3rd card. Ponder this in light of the 10 of Pentacles. Justice is reversed. Tell the truth or suffer the consequences. My friends are wishy-washy now. Say what is real, what is right, what I feel. Let go of the past. Turn a new leaf. The 4th card is the 5 of Cups and suggests what to do. Things are not as they appear. Keep emotions in check. Beware of deception and illusion. Reinforce my beliefs with facts and expect the same of others. Take care of unfinished business. I wrote all this down because I am a 6, and I knew I would forget it. All Hallowtide. That was 2 months ago. Sometimes I ask you, as if you are here to ask, where did you go? I am looking in a drawer that is still full of your stuff. Scraps of paper with phone numbers or notes or aphorisms, receipts, stuff that was yours. And your absence once again throws me off kilter and into the terror of absolute loneliness, loss, and oblivion. The pit, Sheol. I look at your unfinished painting I hung on the wall, so your beauty is always with me. These are the days of the dead, late October, early November, when we visit the catacombs and look at the skeletons of loved ones. These are the days when we make sugar images of that which we fear most, and children put on masks and costumes of their fantasies of desire or terror. And all of us enjoy the colors of death on the trees. Where are you? Are you in nature, in the sunset sky you stared at as you were so long and dying? Almost as an infant stares at the world, you stared at the world you were leaving. Did your breath really return to that which made it possible to begin with, to life universal, the breath of God? I remember, and I can never forget, when your breathing stopped and your sister tapped me. She was taking your pulse, and it stopped while I was kissing your forehead. These are the days of the dead, and we tend to our shrines, or tell ghost stories, or watch the parable of Linus and the pumpkin patch. Linus, who stopped the show to read from the gospel the meaning of Christmas, and then started his own cult, projecting his Messiah upon a fat orange figure. And doesn't Linus now become a symbol of those who revere the hollow jack-o'-lantern, whose candle will one day sputter into the void? But today is not that day, because these are the days of the dead. These are the days that grow shorter as the darkness spreads and grow cold and frozen. The weeks to come we'll gather together to keep each other warm, to have our harvest feasts, and ask the Lord's blessing, and light Advent candles. But now I am still looking for the gloves and caps and scarves, and it hasn't started snowing yet, but it will soon. You and I watched a movie where the living dead came out of their graves following an inscrutable demand. One day I will wake up from that nightmare and turn off that horror movie, but not today, because these are the days of the dead. Why did I dream of you last night? Why were you so young, beautiful, dancing in the yard? The ghost is nothing but a stick with a sheet on it, you said. You who drank the darkness. That's it. Thank you, Rebecca, and then Cecilia.